a time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Australia's best independent news and opinion radio show, The Daily Australian, with Nicola Charles and Jason Olbourne.
Hello, good morning and welcome to the Daily Australian for this Wednesday, June the 12th, 2025. It's episode 100 plus GST, or 110 in the old measure. Nicola Charles, welcome back.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the show. Again, thank you for all your messages. I love hearing from you guys. They're coming in on all the platforms now, Messenger and Substack and email even to the Daily Australian, thedailyaustralian@gmail.com. So keep those coming in. And I'm very, very flattered and touched that you all sent messages about me getting well. And, you know, how did you do it? I think you're all busy rushing off and getting your organic honey. But I did get trolled yesterday, Jason, by someone who said to me that they were so disappointed in me because they thought I was one of the good guys, but clearly I'm a Zionist. So let me just clear that up for you. I'm from Worcestershire in the UK, a farming community, cricket farming. Bit of Worcestershire saucery, if you know what Worcestershire sauce is. There is no way on God's earth that I've ever been touched by Zion. The first time I actually knew what Zionism was when someone sent me a clip of Joe Biden saying he was a proud Zionist. Do you remember that clip? What I am is someone who believes in fairness, Jason. So, you know, as I said, I don't hold the people of nations responsible for the actions of their governments. And I don't know who's who in the intelligence community and the one world government. Believe me, if I did, I'd name them on the show. So you're incorrect about that. And when we're trying to do so much good on this show, it's a bit sad when you get trolled, isn't it, Jason? You got trolled yesterday, didn't you?
Oh, yeah, you know, it's part of it. What I don't understand, well, first of all, for all the people that scream Zionism, put your hand up and let me know how many Jewish people you actually know. That's the first thing, because I don't think people who scream Zionism actually know Jewish people.
Well, they do. They just don't know they're Jewish, probably. They do.
But that's the point. So if you don't know who's a Jew and who's not a Jew, and then you want to scream Zionism like, you know, all Jews are bad type of thing, it's just a bit of a nonsense. I mean, Bernie Sanders is a Jew and he's anti-Israel. So, you know, work that one out just for perspective. Of course, yeah. I mean, this is the point, right? So, and there are many people that I've spoken to in the Jewish community who explain that where they stand, you know, people of our age group, and their kids see it very differently. They think that Israel's committing genocide. The parents don't think that's the case. So there's a difference.
Well, they protest. There was a whole Jewish bunch of people, hundreds of them, who protested in America against what's happening in Palestine. That doesn't get much press, though. That doesn't fit the narrative, that one.
So this is the point. Now, last night I did an interview with Josh Bernstein, clearly Jewish, and I got attacked by a couple of people on that interview with just stupid stuff. But basically calling us imbeciles and stupid and whatever, and not understanding that it's the billionaires. Because when you get onto the subject of immigration, it's the billionaires. Then there was a picture of Trump, standing over someone on the ground with a MAGA or something, making out that they're just, just ridiculous stuff. Just doesn't make any sense. But yesterday on this show, getting sort of trolled over a comment about, don't you realize it's all about digital ID and Trump's just ushering it in? To which I replied, well, he got rid of CBDCs, which kind of, gets rid of most of the purpose of a digital ID. So it kind of nullifies in that regard. And then a comeback of sorts, which kind of said, ha, 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 CIA, PSYOP, white hats, whatever. And what I don't understand is, what are you getting stuck into me for? Why do you want to be the smartest guy in Auschwitz? So we're all going to get rounded up at the end of the day. We're going to get shoved into a concentration camp. Which, by the way, my Russian grandfather, did 15 years in Siberia before he escaped. So I did come from good, hearty Russian stock, as my mother used to tell me, and what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. So, if that's the worst that they're going to do is to shove us into a prison one day for going against the system, well, I'll stand in my grandfather's footsteps if that's the case, and realise that there are good people that have served time who are currently serving time. And I think of my friend David McBride, Nicola. He worked with us at TNT Radio. He was the son of Dr. William McBride, the doctor who, unfortunately, Dr. William McBride ended up having, part of his career was disgraced. But before that, he was the doctor that uncovered the harms of thalidomide. So he's a hero forever, Dr. William McBride. And David, his son, became a military lawyer. David exposed Australian war crimes, and David went to jail for exposing said war crimes. He's got 5 years and 8 months, and his appeal was rejected last week, and will have to serve at least 2 years and 3 months before being able to get some sort of parole. I don't know a nicer man than David McBride, and in the time when he was waiting for his sentencing after he had to plead guilty because the judge wouldn't allow him to submit any of his evidence, that's how bad it was, I would ring David and say, listen, how are you going with, the letters that you need to present to the judge in terms of, reducing your sentence, character references? And he said, I'll get around to it. I said, David, look, I will be in the car in 5 minutes. I will come down there. I will hold your hand. We'll ring these people together. We can't wait. We need to do this stuff. And he was sort of a bit blasé about it all. And I just didn't understand where he was going. I don't know if David had convinced himself that he wasn't going to get the sentence that he did. He may have been hoping for a suspended sentence, and I think he put his faith, in the wrong system. But that is a good man, an innocent man, who is locked up behind bars. The one thing I'll say about him, that he had a man in his 50s, had a brilliant physique, very strong, and I bet he's doing 150 sit-ups an hour inside there, occupying his mind as you have to.
But there are so many good people,
so many. He'd been threatened 3 times, badly in prison. He had to be moved. So it's tough, but somehow you survive this stuff.
And just on you mentioned your grandfather there. My grandfather was German and from Berlin. And when war broke out, he was 18 and he was at college in Berlin studying shipbuilding. And he was conscripted, forced onto a U-boat because he understood ships and boats. And he'd been in the English Channel for 3 months as a teenager, right? These are kids. It's like expecting our kids to go to war now, the TikTok generation. And his U-boat was captured by the British fleet, and he was put to work on a prisoner of war camp where Worcestershire, and he fell in love with the daughter of the farm owner, the farm where the prisoner of war camp was. And that was my grandmother. So that's my story. It's probably the opposite of a Zionist background, actually. Now, Jason, I want to get on to something really fun.
Okay.
I want to do what I'm calling the Antifa game show, right?
Oh.
Yes. Do you know about the concept of revelation of the method?
Well, you're going to have to fill me in, because I don't feel like I have enough clues to answer the question in this form of trivia. Can I buy a vowel?
Can you what? No. So you have no credits to buy a vowel. So revelation of the method is this concept that people do talk about online, where they sort of have to announce ahead of time what they're doing.
Yes.
You think about the Olympics in the UK and how it was all kids in bed and spike proteins floating around and the Grim Reaper. It was so terrifying. At the time, we thought, what's this about? In England, we were like, this is a really weird opening ceremony. But then you look back at it and go, you bastards, you were literally telling us what you were going to do. So that's revelation of the method, announcing it. Now, could you please put up the slide of the prepaid Antifa card that has been exposed in Los Angeles? Okay. So what does it say at the top of that card, Jason?
Anti-family.
Yes. Wow, you got it in one. You won the game show. So it says Antifa, and they've added family at the end. So it's like the Antifa family.
Yes.
But what it actually says is anti-family. That is revelation of the method.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
It's so obvious, isn't it? Now, how do you get said card? And it's actually like a credit card, right? I can see down the bottom right.
It's a prepaid Visa. Yeah, prepaid Visa card. Well, MasterCard, I think, is the little circles at the bottom.
So how I thought Antifa didn't have an organization. I thought it was just a collection of like-minded, crazy people that just got out there and Antifa, anti-fascist, anti-family.
Isn't that
Very
horrible?
interesting, isn't
I
it?
looked at it. I looked at that picture, and then I went to bed last night, and I was like, the Antifa family. My brain was like, keep looking at it, keep looking at it. And I went, oh my God, I'm not imagining it. It says anti-family. Again, revelation of the method. Thank you for telling us. I mean, it's absolutely terrifying what's going on.
Unbelievable. It's incredible, isn't it? It's speechless to think that and then they just, they go around thinking that this is okay. So let's get this right. These are the same people who are anti-Trump, which means that they are generally pro-vaccine, even though they took Trump's vaccine.
They're anti-freedom, basically.
But they told you that you had to take a medicine to protect Nana, who was part of the family, but rejected the family. And it was us who are pro-family that were rejected by our own family. I spoke to someone yesterday who told me that that they were banned from Christmas unless they took a rat test during COVID. So were we. And I thought, how incredible is this that was the case? I mean, it was the best thing that ever happened because we had Christmas at home, and we now only have Christmas at home, and we don't travel on Christmas, and we have our menu, our rules. The kids are happy. They get to play with all that stuff. It's the best Christmas ever.
If people want Christmas with me, they have to come to me. And, there's usually 12 or more at the table because I'm like, no, I don't do Christmas anywhere else. And the reason is I'm in Australia. And as I said, I'm British from Worcestershire. And I need that roast turkey, or if there's lots of people, 2 roast turkeys for Christmas lunch. So if I go to the Greeks or go anywhere else, I'm not getting a roast turkey. So that in my British heart, it's like, well, I haven't had a Christmas. So, it's once a year, we are Christians. So it's like, no, I'm getting that turkey.
Well, that's part of it, isn't it? To put the menu out there. Look, in our house, we have the ultimate cosmopolitan continental kitchen. We cook from all countries, all cuisines. At the weekend, or the long weekend, we did British food. Tell me exactly what I meant to cook in British food. Fish and chips.
Well, they're cheeky bugger. You're a cheeky bugger, Jason Olbourne. I tell you what, the fish and chips in Australia will never be as good as the fish and chips in UK. Never.
That's fine.
They're not greasy and they're not handed in newspaper, so they're not proper, mate. There's 2 dishes in the UK that are the British dishes, and it's so weird because the first one is the obvious one. It's the roast. In fact, the French call British people in French roast beefs. That's what they call us because we love our roast. But the other very British dish is chicken tikka masala, which doesn't even exist. It doesn't exist in India. It was like a made-up curry for British people because it's softer. So there's lots of curries in our house. I'm quite good at cooking curries. Why are we talking about cultural food?
Because I guess what we're trying to say is that when you cross barriers and you realise the unimportance of isolation, but assimilation, etc., makes all the point. So we did Russian food at the weekend. Last night I did one of the dishes, which is it's a Jewish dish, potato latkes. It's also potato rosti, so it's German and it's Jewish. Heaven forbid that it's the same food. But I did a trip to Israel 25 years ago, and you eat with Israelis who are exactly the same as the Arabs. It's the same thing. They eat the same, they look the same, they sound the same, and when you get past all that stuff, you realize that we are all, one, etc. I've done, I actually cooked, I think I told you, I used to cook in a kitchen when in between lockdowns. For seniors, I got invited to work there, and my plan, because the budget was so small each week, I think it was $8 a head or something, and I had to cook 3 courses plus something when they arrived for the guests with $8 per head, and the only way I could do that was doing peasant food. And the way I said it was, well, we're not allowed to travel anymore, it's lockdown, so what we're going to do is I'm going to bring the kitchens of the world to you, and every week I would cook peasant food from every country: Lebanese, Chinese.
Lebanese, don't talk to me about baba ganoush. That's the best dip on the planet, baba ganoush. Oh my God.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you there. So that was the point. We had a lot of fun doing that. Of course, Russian food, Hungarian food. I did it all from scratch. And the rule was no rissoles, no matter what. We're not giving any rissoles out. We're going to do proper food. And it was a whole lot of fun. So it just shows you that, you can do anything. And the creative side of things, have a go at doing something brand new.
Well, for
And
health, Jason, for health, variety is the spice of life. Your
mhm,
body needs so many different little things from different areas. I talked about some of the stuff yesterday. But I think the reason British people are so hardy are things like that chicken tikka masala, because turmeric, you don't have to like
mm,
curries or Indian food or anything, but turmeric, you've got to get turmeric into your diet.
mm.
And curry's the best way. I mean, you can put it in other stuff. I think my husband puts a bit of it in orange juice, but it's really, really good for your health. Talking of good for your health, I did send you another slide that was a warning on a packet of organic tobacco. Have you got that slide? I just
Let's
want
find
to
that
say
for you.
something about yeah,
Here
I
we
just
go.
want to say, okay, so this is the warning, bit embarrassing, on my packet of organic tobacco, right? Now, it says the toxic chemicals in tobacco smoke damage your blood vessels, damage your body's cells, and attack your immune system. Which is interesting, right? Because that's on an organic packet of tobacco that has no chemicals in it, right? So there's obviously some legislation that all tobacco, organic or non organic, has to have that warning on it. Now, I was sitting there looking at it this morning, and this is how I feel about it. What, by the way, they've stopped putting on packets of cigarettes and tobacco that it causes cancer, which I find really, really interesting. Imagine if a mandate came along and your children were mandated to smoke, not organic, normal cigarettes or tobacco every single day, or let's say once a year, a big smoke up once a year. And they were forced to inhale those toxic chemicals that damage their immune system and cells. That's essentially what the mRNA vaccines are.
Mm,
We know that they're toxic, that they damage cells, that they disturb the immune system, they knock it down a few notches, and that's on the vaccine schedule. And
mm,
yet tobacco, organic or not, gets that warning. You would never mandate anything for anyone. So how can you mandate something else that does exactly the same things as that organic tobacco or non-organic tobacco would do
mm.
for people to take in? I find it so bizarre. The hypocrisy is that we live in a crazy, crazy world.
Well, another way that you might look at it is to say, well, what we're going to do is that we don't like cancer, so we're going to make cancer chemotherapy compulsory. So if everyone gets chemotherapied, then we're going to kill off the cancer. Like that's the logical argument, right? It's complete nonsense. How can
Well,
you
that's
say
bad
that
for you.
how can you say that the jab can harm you? So we're not going to give it to certain people, but in other circumstances, the benefits outweigh the harms.
Mm.
How about we just avoid flus? Or how about we build immune system so that if we get flu, we don't necessarily suffer with it a whole lot. But
Well,
that's
I
not
got
even an
through it in
argument.
3 days. I got through it in 3 days.
Mm,
I'm not young. I'm 55. Right. And someone said on Hoodie's podcast the other day, I really like what that young girl was saying. And I was like, who's she talking about? I was the only girl on their show. And I was like, oh, God bless her. Like, like her comment and follow her. I'm 55. I was always been pretty fit in my life. I ran for 27 years. I ran on running teams to raise money for charity, all that kind of stuff. I wouldn't say I'm fit, but I wouldn't say I'm unfit. And I got over it in 3 days by using food as medicine and by thinking about it myself. So that's all we have to do. And I think as well, you have to consider like the immune system is something that constantly needs to be helped. It just constantly needs to be helped, jabbed and unjabbed. So you need to get onto that. That's like first order of business is make sure it's like the car, right? You wouldn't try, we always talk about cars. I'm talking about combustion cars now, real cars. You wouldn't drive your car without coolant in it because your car would explode. You wouldn't drive
mm.
your car without oil in it because your engine would get trashed. And you wouldn't drive it without fuel. It's the same for the body, and you need to start taking care of your body. It's like it's your number one priority. Why? Because this body is the vessel that houses your brain and your soul. So if you want your brain and your soul to live on, take care of its vessel. It's like a spaceship. That's how I see it. This is our spaceship, and we need to keep it in good working order, Jason.
Absolutely, we do. Well, I'm glad that you mentioned internal combustion engine cars, also known as ICE, because ICE has been in the news all week since last weekend over in LA, and of course that has been the catalyst for said riots. And there's a lot of questions being asked about funding of said rioting and paid insurrectionists, if you will. And we mentioned that yesterday, that if this is going to be an insurrection, what's going to become of it? Well, today, and I'm going to play a clip for you now. It's an extended clip from Carolyn Levitt, the US press secretary. Take a look. She is on the front foot and she's putting it into perspective. Take a look and we'll come back and discuss.
Left-wing radicals waving foreign flags viciously attacked ICE and Border Patrol agents as well as Los Angeles police officers. These criminals injured police, threw rocks at police cars and officers, burned vehicles, shut down freeways, and lobbed Molotov cocktails, all because the Trump administration was removing violent criminal illegal aliens from the city. These attacks were aimed not just at law enforcement, but at American culture and society itself. Rioters burned American flags, chanted "Death to ICE," and spray-painted anti-American slogans on buildings. But President Trump will never allow mob rule to prevail in America. The most basic duty of government is to preserve law and order, and this administration embraces that sacred responsibility. Democrats like Governor Gavin Newsom and Mayor Karen Bass shamefully failed to meet their sworn obligations to their citizens. They didn't have the courage to do the right thing and protect law-abiding Californians from rioters. That's why President Trump deployed the National Guard and mobilized Marines to end the chaos and restore law and order. The mob violence is being stomped out. The criminals responsible will be swiftly brought to justice, and the Trump administration's operations to arrest illegal aliens are continuing unabated. When the initial immigration enforcement actions took place on June 6th, Mayor Bass took to social media to say she was deeply angered by what has taken place. Mayor Bass then embarked on one of the most outrageous campaign of lies this country has ever seen from an elected official, blaming President Trump and brave law enforcement officers for the violence. She accused heroic American immigration and customs enforcement officers targeting illegal alien murderers, rapists, and pedophiles of, quote, sowing terror in communities and disrupting basic principles of safety in our city. Around the same time, Governor Newsom claimed that immigration enforcement actions were causing chaos. That's how radical Democrats have become. Their opposition to President Trump has forced them to side with illegal alien criminals in their communities and violent rioters and looters over law enforcement officers who are just doing their jobs. Mayor Bass and Governor Newsom fanned the flames and demonized our brave ICE officers. Instead of defending their city and their state, Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom claimed that in order for the riots and the violence to stop, ICE needed to leave and immigration raids must end. In other words, the position of the Democrat Party is that the federal government is not allowed to enforce our laws and to arrest and deport illegal alien criminals. They're attempting to use a violent mob as a weapon against their own constituents to prevent the enforcement of immigration law. This is deeply un-American and morally reprehensible. President Trump received a clear mandate from voters to reverse the illegal invasion ushered in by Joe Biden's open border and to end the lawlessness represented by Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom's California. President Trump promised to carry out the largest mass deportation campaign in American history, and left-wing riots will not deter him in that effort. Sanctuary cities and states will no longer be allowed to shield illegal criminals from deportation. Just take a look at some of the illegal monsters who were taken off the streets in Los Angeles in recent days. A Vietnamese national, a known gang member with a conviction for second-degree murder. A Mexican national with convictions for child molestation who was armed with a dangerous weapon and had previous arrests for robbery and domestic violence. A Filipino national with convictions of rape, assault, burglary, and theft. A Mexican national convicted of statutory rape, narcotics violations, and hit and run. A Nicaraguan national with convictions for domestic violence and hit and run, and a previous arrest for willful cruelty to a child. And an illegal alien from Mexico who was arrested after allegedly throwing a Molotov cocktail at law enforcement officers during the Paramount riots on Saturday. He is now being charged with attempted murder. Law-abiding American citizens do not want these public safety threats living in their communities, no matter what Democrats like Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom may claim. And let this be an unequivocal message to left-wing radicals in other parts of the country who are thinking about copycatting the violence in an effort to stop this administration's mass deportation efforts. You will not succeed. Any lawlessness will only strengthen this president's resolve to defend the majority of Americans who want to live their lives peacefully, free from the fear of violent, criminal, illegal aliens. As President Trump said, order will be maintained and illegal aliens will be expelled from our country.
This is a rehash and a rerun and a reignition of exactly what happened in his first administration, right, with the Black Lives Matter riots. So we just showed that prepaid MasterCard for the people who are paid like vigilantes, rioters there in LA. And it clearly says anti-family. And these people are spraying on the fences now anti-ICE. Right? So you can't be an anti-vaxxer, but you can be anti-family and anti-ICE. Now, in this case, ICE doesn't mean the internal combustion engine, obviously. It is the Immigration Crime Engagement Unit. So you're anti-cleaning up crime. So they're pro-crime. They're pro-crime. They're literally telling you they're pro-crime.
The difference between it, of course, is that this administration is a Pete Hegseth, it's Pam Bondi, it's a Kash Patel, a Dan Bongino. It's a very, very different scenario, Tom Homan, etc. So this time, you know, FAFO, and that's exactly what's going on. Now, there was talk yesterday on one of the reports coming out of the US that they were targeting specifically money laundering crimes of said illegal immigrants. And if that were the case, and that was enough to spur on the riots, and therefore the funded riots, if that's the case, and we saw Trump talk about that, then it's going to lead to the same people, because the ones funding who are trying to cover up would be the ones that would be said to be linked to money laundering. As a consequence, Josh Hawley has written this letter. Let's put it up there in a sec if it loads up.
It's up there.
It's loaded. You can see
up
it?
there. Mm-hmm.
Okay. For some reason at my end, it's not showing. Isn't that odd?
No,
So what so just to read it off for you, how odd is that? I can't see it. So it's telling us that I write in my capacity as chair of the Senate Subcommittee on Crime and Counterterrorism regarding your organization's alleged role in financing and materially supporting the coordinated protests and riots that have engulfed Los Angeles in recent weeks. While peaceful protest is a cornerstone of American democracy, these demonstrations have escalated into lawless mob actions. They've obstructed federal law, etc. This is exactly what Caroline Levitt has led us to. So he now wants actual records all the way back from November 5, 2024 to the present on internal communications, including emails, text messages, etc., including all the way down to donor lists. That's a big deal. And that is to the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights. So we have a situation now oops, there you go.
It's gone now. There you go.
Yep, there you go. How odd is that I can't see it at that end, but I can see the other ones. Anyway, regardless. So if this is being funded and it's orchestrated, well, there are people that are going to have a case to answer in this case. Now, there is a lot of news going on, and of course there is the great deflections about what's going on. And because Gavin Newsom, got upset, as did Karen Bass, the mayor of LA, in relation to National Guard being brought in, and they're claiming that it wasn't necessary. Now, the idea is that if they can't handle their own business, then the feds have to come in and send the National Guard and send the Marines, which both work for the President of the United States. So this puts them at odds with the locals who want to deflect on what is going on. So you would expect, a bit like that stunt where Elon Musk and Donald Trump had that falling out, and Musk said Trump was on the Epstein lists, and then all the Democrats came screaming, saying that Trump's on the Epstein files, and that story's going on in the background. Well, Nancy Pelosi, who everyone knows was the one that held back the National Guard from coming in on January 6th to keep the peace, she came out yesterday and decided to make an alternate historical claim. Here she is telling the world that it was Donald Trump that rejected the National Guard. Take a look.
In a bipartisan way, on January 6th, with violence against the Constitution, against the Congress, and against the United States Capitol, we begged the President of the United States to send in the National Guard. He would not do it. Not only would he not do it, when law enforcement people were being harmed, some later died, he would not send it in when an instigation that an insurrection that he incited was causing damage to those assigned to protect the Capitol and the Constitution that day, to accept the results of the Electoral College.
So she's telling the world that Donald Trump, she begged for the National Guard, begged for it. There you go. And Donald Trump rejected it. And of course, we've all learned that Donald Trump offered 10,000 National Guardsmen. What I'm going to do now is, because we are involved with the news, and I'm going to show you an interview I did last year with the Chief of Police from the US Capitol, Stephen Sund. This was on TNT Radio, and this is going directly to the heart of who ordered the National Guard and what happened. And it's important to know here that the Sergeant at Arms is appointed by, nominated by the Speaker of the House, and then is approved by Congress. So take a listen to this short clip. This is obviously what we're finding disturbing, because you've asked for assistance on the day numerous times. You've talked about this ad nauseum, the 71-minute gap between, this is one part of it, the 32 odd phone calls that you make in this particular time. I mean, how hard are you meant to push in this situation, therefore, for it not to be the Capitol Police's problem?
Let me tell you, and it's the craziest thing. The more I look at it, and you're absolutely right. Here we are almost 3.5 years later, and more information keeps coming out. And it's like crazy town. You keep turning the page and more comes out. And I appreciate you mentioning the book, because here it is. And it was put together initially. I started sitting at this very desk I'm at right now, putting it together as an after action, a critical incident review. And you look at the things, for instance, the 71 minutes you talk about, I'm the only chief of police in the United States of America that has a law from Congress that says I have to go to the Sergeant at Arms and congressional leadership to request support. I requested the National Guard twice on Sunday, January 3rd. I was denied twice by the two Sergeant at Arms who are politically appointed. Even while we're under attack, we begin getting attacked at 12:53 p.m. on the west front of the Capitol. 12:55, I call in DC Police, my previous agency. We had coordinated them putting some resources nearby. Thank God they did. And at 12:58, I make my first call to the Sergeant at Arms requesting that legal permission, because even while we're under attack, I have to go to him to get permission to bring in federal resources. And you're right, 71 minutes. At 2:09, I finally get approval. Imagine that. Imagine dialing 000, the emergency, Australian emergency number, and being put on hold for 71 minutes while you're under attack. And then even once I got approval, the National Guard, which was in eyesight of the Capitol, wouldn't even come for 3.5 hours.
Twice requested National Guard on January the 3rd and was rejected by the Sergeant at Arms, who is appointed by the Congress on a nomination by the Speaker of the House. Now, I'm just going to remove the crawl at the bottom, because I'm going to show you the actual the information here. So this is the current Sergeant at Arms, William McFarland, and it says there, nominator under his name, incumbent William McFarland, nominator Speaker of the House. There you go, and it's a 2-year term. This is the fellow that was there that Stephen Sund had to deal with, Paul Irving, and he served John Boehner, Paul Ryan, and Nancy Pelosi in that period. And you'll notice that he was in office until January 7, 2021, so he resigned the day after, which is interesting, the day after January 6th.
We just proved that Nancy Pelosi is a liar.
We do, absolutely. Now, it goes a little further. It's worth playing this other clip that from Steve, another couple of minutes. But here I point out fact after fact after fact. And the reason I do this is that it's from an article from an Australian journalist written in The Spectator at the time. But it goes to the fact that Stephen Sund was on Tucker Carlson previous to my interview, and it had been viewed over 20 million times. So the thing was, the thing was with this particular interview, that Stephen Sund is as straight as you can get, a rule of law guy, not a conspiracy theorist. And in the interview with Tucker Carlson, Tucker breaks out into fits of nervous laughter. It keeps going. He says, how can you not believe that something's going on here? So my question was to frame that in light of the facts, to see where this straight as a die guy goes. And we'll come back and we'll discuss it. Take a look at this one.
That's crazy.
It's extraordinary because then when we go back and look at this particular testimony that's popped up the middle of March this year, and I'm quoting from an article in Australia's Spectator, and it says, a vital anti-Trump smear dissolved in the middle of March this year with the release of suppressed evidence that the former president had indeed sought an extra 10,000 National Guards to buttress the security of the Capitol on January 6, 2021. Far from aiming to incite a riot to seize power, the president had repeatedly tried to boost troop numbers at the Capitol, but had failed or had been thwarted, which is what the article is generally about. So much for an insurrection, a charge the Australian media gullibly recycled for years. The new evidence comes courtesy of the US House's initial findings report reviewing the Democrats' Get Trump show trial. The J6 Select Committee, the report says, the J6 Committee was highly partisan, irregular in its processes, and hid much testimony and evidence, deleting hundreds of video recordings and losing over a terabyte of digital data. Now, I know, Steve, that you had this incredibly successful interview with Tucker Carlson, who periodically through the interview broke out in fits of nervous laughter and kept saying this looks like it was planned. When you get this extra information going on here, can you see where Tucker's coming from? I know that you play it as a very, very straight bat. You are a rule of law guy, as you've said, but how do you look at this and not react in another way?
And I believe that's exactly what I told him. And the more you look at the information that comes out, being denied National Guard in advance, the way the intelligence was handled, the way the Department of Defense, which, when police agencies become overwhelmed and we have to request support, that request goes to the Department of Defense, and they wouldn't even move, and they were within eyesight of the Capitol. It's hard not to think that there's something more sinister behind all this. I'm not a big conspiracy theorist. I'm, like I said, a rule of law type of guy. But when you look at how bad the intelligence was messed up and then being denied for 71 minutes while we're under attack, that just makes no sense. So, yeah, it's not hard for somebody to start going down that rabbit hole that there's something more sinister.
What's sinister about it, and what you need to understand, is that the Capitol, just like the City of London, is an empire within an empire. So that's why the Speaker of the House appoints that police chief, right? They've got their own laws, their own rules. What happened when Joe Biden was sworn in, the day before Joe Biden was sworn in? A 30-foot high razor wire fence, because they knew what they were going to do to us all. 30-foot high razor wire fence was erected all around the Capitol, a country within a country. And it was, and I don't know if it's still there. It probably isn't under Trump. I don't know. But it was manned. It became a little police state within America, because I think they probably thought, when you've got someone like Joe Biden standing there saying, with regard to the injections, we've been patient, but our patience is wearing thin, that there could have been essentially like a real civil war from Americans. If we'd all woken up a lot quicker, people would have been like, what are they trying to do to us, right? We shouldn't have to inject anything to not get the flu. So he's right, and he's not a conspiracy theorist. Everything about this time in history since 2020 has been sinister, and they would really rather you didn't notice it. So when you've got someone in his position as suspicious about these actions as us, I mean, we both know, Jason, former Vic police officers who, they said to me during the pandemic early on, when I was doing the White Rabbit podcast, he said to me, you're essentially a citizen police officer, because this is what police officers do. They have a suspicion of crime. Just like he said, something sinister is going on, a suspicion of crime, and then you investigate it because you have to see if there's evidence that something suspicious has gone on. And that doesn't make you a conspiracy theorist. It makes you a sort of citizen police officer. And there's a real police officer saying, hey, something sinister was going on.
This is the point. You can't get a more straight up guy than Stephen Sund. That was the point. And if you can have a politician who we know can lie professionally and get away with it, and we've seen that over and over again, who do you believe in this circumstance? The chief of police that is the only police chief in the country that needs to get approval from the sergeant at arms appointed by the politician. If that's not a layer of cover that is too much, I don't know what is. But this goes to credibility, and we'll let the audience be the judge there. It's just an astonishing
I do think
story.
America has a lot to answer for generally, Jason. It does. I know you're a Trump guy, and I know we want to see the ship corrected. And you're right; it's like a giant oil tanker. And someone said, we've turned too far left. If you use that analogy, right? I've even got a book here called Left Turn, which explains how America fell when it took a left turn, and we want it to do a right turn, right, and go back to base and right the ship. The turn that this giant oil tanker is taking is so slow because they've turned the wheel and it's turning like an inch every 2 hours. That's what's happening. And we want to see it happen quicker. I think the difficult situation that the Trump administration is facing is that they don't want us in the rest of the world to know that there are actually two Americas. There are two Americas. There's a good side to America. Not the democratic side, but the democracy side. And there's the deep state and the industrial military complex. Oh, and it is obvious now, Jason, that what they're trying to create is sort of Armageddon. We don't hear that word a lot anymore, but it feels like Armageddon. Attack on children's education, attack on our physical health, attack on our finances, attack on our democracy. There's no way that Joe Biden won that election in 2020. I know that's like heresy to say that, but there's no way. And the 81 million voters, the little digital friends, they all disappeared, in the 2024 election. So,
that's just because they're sexist. Come on, and they don't like brown skin. Isn't that what it is? I mean, obvious. There's Democrats, right? But you've nailed 2 points.
How is Trump going to get rid of this deep state? How is this going to happen? Like, is he just managing them? Because he obviously talks to them, Jason. Is he managing them, but trying to keep American lives as normal as possible? What do you think's happening there?
It's really interesting because those of us that were researching, goodness me, I mean, coming into this as a lefty, coming into this as a Bernie Sanders man, and to tell you how much of a Bernie Sanders man I was, I bet on Sanders to win the presidency, and I bet enough money that if he had won, which I firmly believed he would, it would have paid off my house. That's how much money I bet on Bernie Sanders.
I bet on Trump and lost it in 2020, a buttload as well.
So did I, but it cost me an absolute fortune, but I got terrific odds and I thought this is unbelievable. And I still, if it was proven that he was, was stolen, I mean, the statute of limitations are up. I do want to get my money back from Sportsbet, but, I've lost that and I give that away at this point, knowing that. So to then switch into the Trump camp almost overnight when he won that election, and 5,000 of my closest and dearest friends on my old Facebook page, all of whom were Bernie Sanders fans from America and around the world, all of us overnight became Trump supporters without a word spoken. It was just a natural occurrence. And the reason that was, the only conclusion was that one anti-establishment player became the other one. We just backed the wrong horse, but this is where we were going. And the whole point was, why did Trump run? I asked that question of Darren Hinch last week after he supported.
Because he knows. They all say, Trump knows. He does know. Why do you think he said years ago? Because everyone was like, poor Trump, stop saying Orange Man bad, stop saying he's a womanizer and all this. And he said to them, you don't need to worry about me. This was before the pandemic. And he said to his supporters in massive, massive events, you don't need to worry about me. They're not after me. They're after you, and I'm stood in the way. And we didn't pay enough attention to that.
Well, this is the point. So how is Trump the bad guy in all this? This is what I'm trying to say. This is what I'm trying to say. Why did Trump run? I asked Darren Hinch, and after he praised him for sticking to his plan, but didn't like him for various reasons of character, and he said ego, and I thought, really? That's the best that you can come up with was ego. And I thought, and I didn't offer the follow-up question, which was, Darren, why did you run for the Senate? Why do you, as a 60-year career journalist, can run on honor and principle, but you're saying just because you don't like him politically that he ran on ego, which was it's a fair question to ask. I didn't go down that pathway at the time, but why would a 69-year-old billionaire give up his freedom, his money, risk his security, that of his family, all to become the president of the United States unless there was a plan? So that the talk was that Trump was the front man, the only one that was capable of winning this election in a landslide to stop a coup d'etat, which was the military finally going to take over from the corrupt deep state once and for all. So but that would have resulted in a civil war.
You just said it. We're existing as we are the, what's it called? We are the collateral damage from an American Civil War. But the American Civil War isn't the people against the government of the day. The American Civil War is the Democratic side, Trump and the people who voted for him, and the deep state, the industrial military complex. That's the Civil War, but that's a very dangerous Civil War because they've got all the weapons.
Well, not anymore. Because
we are we're the fallout from that, the collateral damage. That's what we are.
But we're not collateral damage because we're part of the globalist capture. And that's the point. That is what the World Economic Forum is all about, the WHO, etc. This is the globalists versus Trump. That's why it's such a difficult scenario. But the difference is that Trump has had his finger on the nuclear code since 2017, and many will argue, how could it be possible that Biden had his finger on the codes from 2021 to 2025? It's not possible that you could believe that at that point. Isn't it ironic, therefore, that just today, because Trump said that Iran cannot have nuclear enrichment, they've already indicated that they were going to happily give them up for a trade deal. Then the supreme leader came out and said, well, no, and did the usual story. And it's always ironic when you look at Iran, this country that's supposed to be such a great threat. They always use the same video, the same backdrop. It's like they recorded it on a camcorder from 1993, and they don't seem to have that technological advancement. Meanwhile, I want to play you the clip. This is from Trump being interviewed by Miranda Devine from the New York Post. Take a look. It's just a short one.
Able to stop Iran from enriching its.
I don't know. I did think so, and I'm getting more and more less confident about it. They seem to be delaying, and I think that's a shame. But I'm less confident now than I would have been a couple of months ago. Something happened to them, but I am much less confident of a deal being made.
So interesting that the choice of language, much less confident, not confident with what's going on with Iran, and this is the threat now that could it explode? Well, how much of a threat is it? What we're now seeing, of course, is some details coming through. I'm just going to look them up here for you. Pete Hegseth.
What if Iran is in some kind of deal with the deep state, Jason?
Well, this is the connection, right? Is Iran, who took money from millions of dollars in cash for this so-called nuclear deal, which they're going to renege on. This is just Pete Hegseth saying that people in locations from across the CENTCOM area of responsibility are authorised for a voluntary departure. That's an interesting point there. Here's another one that we've picked up today. This is from the US Embassy in Bahrain. I'm just going to read you part of the statement that they put out there today. That has ordered all embassies in striking distance of Iran across the Middle East to convene emergency action committees and send cables back to DC. That was a story published in the Washington Post. We've just learned that the 6th round of nuclear talks between the US and Iran have been cancelled. That's also a development today. The story there was the U.S. Naval Forces Command in Bahrain housing the U.S. Fifth Fleet have been placed on high alert, with families of U.S. service members being told to prepare for possible evacuation. And in another report that we're also just getting in, and I'm just going to read that one out to you now, take that off the screen. According to perhaps Israel may be attacking Iran and their nuclear facilities any day now. The US is making moves all over the Middle East as they are preparing to defend any counterattack by Iran on US bases and interests. The evacuation of US embassies has already begun. Israel is on high alert, and as Iran raises the alert level of its defense system. So this is the posturing that's going on at the moment. Now, it could all be theatre. Let's just make that very clear. It could all be just a game and optics and theatre. But what we're doing is we're bringing this to the fore. So I'm now going to play a clip. This is just to show you the preparation that goes on. This is Tulsi Gabbard, the #1 intelligence officer in the United States, a former Democrat, now Republican. This is a video she put out today on nuclear war. Take a look.
A single nuclear weapon today could kill millions in just minutes. Just one of these nuclear bombs would vaporize everything at its core. People, buildings, life itself. The shockwave would crush structures miles away, killing and maiming countless people. And then comes the fallout. Radioactive poison spreading through the air, water, and soil, condemning survivors to agonizing deaths or lifelong suffering. A nuclear winter could follow, with smoke and ash completely blocking the sun, plunging the world into darkness and cold, killing crops and starving billions. Acid rain would scar the earth, wiping out entire ecosystems. This isn't some made-up science fiction story. This is the reality of what's at stake, what we are facing now. Because as we stand here today, closer to the brink of nuclear annihilation than ever before, political elite and warmongers are carelessly fomenting fear and tensions between nuclear powers. Perhaps it's because they are confident that they will have access to nuclear shelters for themselves and for their families that regular people won't have access to. So it's up to us, the people, to speak up and demand an end to this madness. We must reject this path to nuclear war and work toward a world where no one has to live in fear of a nuclear holocaust.
Jason, that is about as 10 out of 10 on fear porn as you can get. And I'll tell you what's worrying about it. You would only get her to put something like that out so that the public will accept when America strikes. It's like 9/11 to justify the war on terror and Operation Shock and Awe in Iraq. They're going to take somebody out. They're going to take someone out and they're going to say, we had to do it to prevent a nuclear holocaust in America. Is it going to be Iran? I don't know. I mean, it's worrying. I've got Iranian friends who live in Australia. They're very worried about their family members. That is shocking. Can you imagine if that arrived on Channel 7, Channel 9, and Channel 10 in Australia? Something big is about to happen, and that's part of the justification for it. That's extraordinary.
It's an extraordinary clip. I'll argue the counter narrative. What does a great movie need but good actors? I think Tulsi Gabbard is playing a role. I think this is all to bring us back from the brink of nuclear war. I will bet the house on the fact that there will not be a nuclear attack, and that is the point. Now I'm going to show you a clip from just moments ago from Donald Trump. And what's interesting is that here he is at the Kennedy Center alongside his wife Melania. They're attending the premiere of Les Miserables. It's almost like a Nessun Dorma moment. Take a look at this one.
To provide an update on Iran, we're hearing reports that U.S. personnel are being moved out of the region within striking distance.
Well, they are being moved out because it could be a dangerous place, and we'll see what happens. But they are been. We've given notice to move out, and we'll see what happens.
Is there anything that can be done to dial the temperature down in the region?
They can't have a nuclear weapon. Very simple. They can't have a nuclear weapon. We're not going to allow that.
They're not going to have a nuclear weapon.
That bang that happened in the background made her very nervous. Did you see that?
Yeah, absolutely. But isn't it interesting that they're in black tie for a premiere of a remake of the 4 millionth time of Les Miserables at the Kennedy Center? It's just it feels like we're watching The Godfather. That's what it feels like to me. I think it's all theatre, but we present it in a way, and it's interesting.
Les Mis.
I know,
isn't that a message? Jason, that's a message. I went to see Les Mis in London in the West End, right? It's the biggest theatre show, Les Mis. It's very depressing. I mean, the performances are very good, but it's very depressing. They don't call it Miserable for nothing.
Yes.
That was the message about the theatre of war. That was a message. Why would he do it there? Nobody goes by choice to see Les Mis, by the way. I was dragged there by school.
That's right. That, I think, is the point. I think we're watching a movie, and this is it. We'll see what the mainstream news peddles today. By comparison, it's very, very interesting what is being played out here. But if you're evacuating the military at the same point, but look, just for some perspective, just so we can see what's really happening here, I'm just going to show you this particular article. there are more US troops in Los Angeles than there are in Iraq and Syria, just for comparison there, right? 4,800 in LA, 2,500 in Iraq, 1,500 in Syria. So that's an important thing. Now, I just want to give you some other news in brief because we're going to run out of time today. First of all, having seen
Can we talk about this Pesutto guy? We need to talk about this.
I'm going to get to, that's going to be our final story. So I'm just going to run through these ones quickly for you.
Yeah.
So at the same time as we're talking nuclear war, Trump has announced a deal with China has gone through. Full magnets and any necessary rare earths will be supplied up front by China. Likewise, we will provide to China what was agreed to, including Chinese students using our colleges and universities. We are getting a total of 55% tariffs. China is getting 10%. The relationship excellent. So therefore, you're pretty much at peace with China, so we can back off from that one. Now, on non-news news, Elon Musk regrets his post with Donald Trump. Funny that. They went too far, so that one's going to back down very quickly.
Hang on, put that back up. Put that back up. Last week, they went too far. I missed that one. Bloody hell, Elon. Will you get off it? For crying out loud, get off it, dude. Have a cup of coffee.
Now, on this one, this is an interesting one for Australia as we get in towards Australian news. A shock move from Trump rocks Australia. The US will review the AUKUS military pact between Australia and the UK to see if it aligns with Donald Trump's America First policies. The concerning announcement will lead to fears the US could scrap the pact altogether, particularly as the review is being led by someone who previously has expressed reservations about AUKUS. So there you go. That is also interesting. That's putting pressure on Australia and the Albanese government, particularly as Albo is lined up to meet with Trump next week at the G7. So that's an important situation there. In other brief news, Qantas has decided to close its budget airline Jetstar Asia in a major shake-up there. So hundreds of jobs to go in that one. And surprise, surprise, Harvey Weinstein's been found guilty of one charge of sexual assault. His last case that he's serving time for was thrown out. He's been convicted again, but he's also serving 16 years for a separate conviction in Los Angeles. So he's about 73. He will probably most likely die in jail now. That would be the end of Harvey Weinstein.
As an actress, I used to pray that I could get in the room with Harvey Weinstein, and I could get to play a character that was really challenging. And now I just thank my lucky stars that I never met the guy. Amazing.
It's extraordinary, isn't it? And he could do no wrong back in the day. Every year there was, what was the name of his film company? Him and his brother.
Oh, God, it was huge, wasn't it? How embarrassing.
Miramax.
Miramax, that was it. Yeah.
There you go. So the memory's pretty good. All right. So now we're going to talk about these characters, Moira Deeming, John Pesutto. So today we have learnt, or yesterday overnight, in fact, that John Pesutto has rejected an offer of assistance from Moira Deeming that would have saved him from bankruptcy and prevented a costly by-election. So Moira Deeming offered to delay $1.5 million of the bill in return for pre-selection into the upper house for Victoria. She made what was considered to be a final offer. I write to you as a Liberal, and I make this offer as someone who deeply respects the rights of party members to a party that is focused on winning the state election and securing a better future for all Victorians. So the letter goes into great detail there. There's a little bit more from this particular. I don't want to put all the graphics up if I can help it, but it's quite involved. But part of the letter says that to make available money that's already been raised, $750,000, and giving him time up until March of 2027 to pay off the rest of it, which was more than fair. The thing was that it was meant to be a final attempt to spare the party more harm. It is a final offer, not for negotiation. Pesutto rejects it. Not interested. So,
well, he's got people shilling for him. People I'm very disappointed about. Former Australian politicians and the glitterati have come out. Let's raise money to save this politician. And then what did he do last night? He I don't know if it happened last night, but he certainly put it out about 14 hours ago. All this stuff about Australia needs to be multicultural, and he's at a citizenship ceremony and welcome in, and we've always celebrated you, and you're an Australian politician, or you want to be an Australian politician. I assume that's why you don't want to go bankrupt. But you're not representing the majority of Australians. You're not listening. You're tone deaf like the rest of them. I mean, the larger plan here is absolutely terrifying. That guy has got some nerve. Moira Deeming tried to do the right thing. And I just think everyone should stop donating to him. Just let him handle this.
Absolutely. Well, I'll play you that clip now. It's about a minute. Let's have a look at it now.
And it's in that light that you might see what an achievement our democracy really is and how important the step you have taken tonight is to that story. The reason I've always thought that Australia's values, its commitment to human rights, to the dignity of each and every individual, to peaceful diversity, to equality of opportunity, among other elevated values, has echoed around the world and resonated through time. It's people like yourselves standing up and being champions for those values. One of the great things about Burundara, where you've chosen to become citizens and live, is you're now part of that tradition. And I hope you'll take up all the opportunities to make the most of that chance. That's what tonight really is, I think, at the end of the day. It's not just a ceremony. But what tonight is also about is a question. What will you now do to honour and to live up to the tradition that this place, Burundara, in this state, Victoria, in this country, Australia, has produced? That's your story to tell. I know you'll tell it well. Congratulations on becoming citizens tonight.
You're right. Who does he work for? The Victorian people or everyone else who's going to vote for him?
That guy's a tosser. I'm sorry. Look, I understand. I'm a migrant myself. I understand people want to come here and do better economically. But to stand there and talk about Australia's fantastic human rights record, I mean, that was so saccharine. That was so sickening. That was so insincere. You know, again, a movie script, Jason. I would like to welcome you to the country that has all the human rights until Bill Gates' next pandemic. And then you too will line up and do as you're told. And we will help you with your cancer. We will help you with your myocarditis. You know, we won't give you compensation for it, though. We'll close that before you get your compensation. But welcome to Australia. Now give me your fucking money. That's what they want. They're like gangsters. Do you know they're charging these people $100,000 to come to Australia?
Wow.
When I came to Australia in 2012, and I was already a permanent resident for 30 years, when I came in 2012 and brought my husband and 3 children with me, I had to pay $38,000 to attach them to my permanent residency. $38,000. And at the time, I was like, whoa, it's $100,000 now. These people are paying $100,000, and that's just to get here. And then when they get here, give me your money. I mean, Australia's like a black widow spider right now. And the thing is, you can't do this without considering the Australians that are already here, how that's going to demolish their property market, how that, you know, Australians haven't had pay rises in line with inflation for 15 years.
Oh, maybe more, maybe 30. It's we just don't get them. And isn't it interesting that Claire O'Neill comes out and says we have a housing crisis in Australia? Can't figure out why. It's like we have a crisis of people getting sick. We don't know why, but we hold all the power. We won't look, and if you suggest what it might be, and we don't like that answer, we're going to pretend that you don't exist, accuse you of misinformation, round you up, punish you, and censor you into oblivion. The irony to that story is that Fred Paul published this yesterday on his X account. Fred Paul, I'm constantly meeting people who are actively seeking ways to leave Australia. These people are all alike, hardworking taxpayers, asset owners. Their pessimism for Australia's demographic, social, and economic future is overwhelming. How about that, Fred Paul? Yeah, he's terrific. Unbelievable that we're seeing that story. Now,
very sad. I refuse to leave. I refuse. You'll have to chuck me out. I refuse to leave. I love this country and I love this state, Victoria. And I never would have imagined when I came here and started working 30 years ago and paying some damn good taxes, by the way. If you talk about paying your way, my whole television career, I paid my way. I was on Neighbours Monday to Friday and every other weekend. So I only had every other weekend off because every other weekend in between, I was filming Animal Rescue with Nicola Charles for Foxtel. Then at night at the weekends, I was doing personal appearances. The amount of tax I paid in this country was absolutely huge. And I refuse to leave. I'm going to be fighting for this country and this state long after these bastards have retired off to their beachfront property, because only they know that the sea levels aren't really rising. And I'll be here still talking about what you guys did. It's a bloody disgrace. And I'd like to see more former politicians like Jeff Kennett talking about how Australians that have already been here for a while have been abused by these past couple of governments, both the Liberal and Labor, instead of trying to raise money for Pesutto, because he was found guilty of something against a woman and now he doesn't want to have to pay for it. I mean, for a start, doesn't that fly in the face of justice in the court system? What's he doing?
Oh, absolutely. So guilty of defamation, accusing Moira Deeming of turning up at an event, of being associating with Nazis, for goodness sake. And this is the same thing, preventing or presenting and trying to maintain a narrative that was an absolute lie, thinking he could get away with it and getting caught. And that should be the end of his political career. Good luck, good riddance, goodbye.
He tried to destroy her career, Jason.
Correct.
He just, like that, out of thin air, tried to destroy a young female politician's career. Now, I don't like the party she's with, but a lot of things she says make sense. So maybe that's why they wanted her out of the way. Maybe he got, told to nobble her and get her out of the way. But either way, it was unacceptable. And what? Now he's done something unacceptable. We all have to pay compensation and help out this politician. My God, the nerve.
No, absolutely. Well, there could only be one place to go at the end of that, and that will be for today's final story, which happens to be the elephant in the room. You're going to love this one. This is turning that other story on its head as we're going to go to the US. I want you to watch this short clip. I'll play the intro, and then we'll come back and conclude the show.
We've seen that prices are rising on many everyday goods.
Congresswoman,
please don't interrupt me. The time is mine. The time is mine. Please don't interrupt me. I will ask you questions and I will grant you an opportunity to answer them, but please don't interrupt me during my time.
With pleasure.
Okay, I know I'm a woman, but please try to limit yourself to answering my questions. No, I'm sorry, but we get talked over all the time, and I don't want that to happen at this hearing.
Of course. She tries to play the woman card. She can start with a lie, but that's not what it's about. It's the fact that she's a Democrat and a woman and trying to attack this Treasury Secretary. It's hilarious. She gets the Elephant in the Room award today. Mrs. Sanchez, there you go, Linda Sanchez.
What are you going to say? What are you going to say? I talk over you all the time. Nicola, don't talk over me. I'm a man. Stop it.
Absolutely. It's just hysterical. But there you go. Well, tell you what, we've covered a lot of ground today in the show. And for those that have got this far into it, thanks for hanging around. We had a little bit of the radio side, the social side, the fun side was the first 15 minutes of today's show before we got into the hard news. But that is the difference, that we are presenting to you a radio show, news, current affairs, discussion, real people. So we hope that you continue to support and enjoy, like, share, comment, and do all those things that help penetrate that algorithm to get the Daily Australian countrywide, so the rest of the country don't have to put up with Carl and Natalie and all the rest of the usual suspects. Seeing as the project's gone, Q&A's gone, what's next? It won't be us.
And, we have to keep talking about and exploring this 10 years of Armageddon that some absolute arsehole planned somewhere around a boardroom from what I believe to be 2020 to 2030. So we'll keep covering it. I think it's disgraceful. I think these people are incompetent, inept, irresponsible, with terrorist tendencies to terrorize and frighten the world this much. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard, come on, about nuclear Armageddon. We have been through enough. We've been attacked by a bioweapon. We've had our savings stolen. We have no faith in our elections and our democracy anymore. Don't now lay this at the feet of the people globally that we're all going to die in a nuclear holocaust. You know what? If you're going to do it, just press the frigging button, because at least it will be quicker than dragging us through this for 10 years. Someone somewhere is a complete sadist and they're enjoying this. So thank you for watching our take on all of it on the Daily Australian with myself, Nicola Charles, and my co-host and co-producer, Jason Olbourne. We will do this all over again tomorrow.